The tank was still on fire. That thought registered even before the shockwave hit her. Smoke blasted across the ruined field like black sails tearing free. Dirt and metal shards rained down. The wreckage pitched sideways, groaning. Someone was screaming through the static of a busted cum, and Morgan. Rains didn't flinch. She was already running. Her boots sank into the mud with every step, but she was faster than the others realized. Most of the squad was still reeling from the ambush, ducking for cover, checking weapons, shouting over each other like panic would bring order. Morgan didn't waste breath. The tank call sign. Griffin 2 had veered into a minefield. The lead vehicle. No way to get another one through, but someone was alive inside, and they needed to move. Now. She launched over a jagged piece of track armor, dropped into a crouch beside the hull, and braced her hand against the burning surface. Her glove smoked. The heat pulsed through her bones. Still, she listened. Heard the weak thump of someone trying to kick from inside. Driver. Trapped. Morgan's eyes flicked. Across the battlefield. 40 meters to the tree line. 30 to the ridge. She looked back at the tank. Then she grabbed the front plating and heaved. Steel groaned. Her spine locked. Her legs strained against the mud. Every muscle in her body screamed. But the tank moved. She hadn't meant for anyone to notice her. That was rule number 1. At Compound Delta 3. Nestled in the dust-swept hills of Nevada's forgotten training ranges, the rule was simple: stay in your lane. Especially if you were the smallest person in the platoon. Especially if you were the only woman in the transport unit. They called her Bambi behind her back. Too delicate, too careful, too quiet, except the gear lockers were always spotless after her shift. The drone fleet had the fewest malfunctions under her watch. The medics asked for her help when they needed someone with surgeon-steady hands to suture after combat drills. But none of that mattered when a fresh delivery of MREs came, and she carried crates like a forklift, quietly setting them down while the men let her handle the little stuff. Her dad had taught her better than to talk back. You don't win by shouting louder, he'd said. You win by finishing. The first time Sergeant Clay noticed her, he scowled. You're not on the lift rotation, Rains. Yes, Sergeant. Then, why the hell are you carrying shock pallets by hand? She shrugged. The loading rig was jammed. Had to finish the manifest. He looked past her to the 37 pallets stacked in precise rows. You moved all those? Yes, Sergeant. Clay didn't say anything for a while. Then, quietly, I thought they were messing with me. Morgan tilted her head. Some of the guys said you were stronger than the forklift. Thought it was a joke. Morgan said nothing. Just turned, checked her clipboard, and moved on. He watched her the entire time. They didn't find out until the storm simulation. Compound Delta 3 ran an annual emergency response drill. Natural disaster, mass evac, compromised systems. Everything went down. Comms, power, vehicles. Full blackout mode. No training wheels. That year, the scenario was a flash flood triggered by a dam breach. They had 90 minutes to relocate 200 civilians, simulated casualties, and 2 armored units to higher ground. The bridge was gone. The roads were buried in rockslide, and one of the medevac transports was stuck in a ditch, 6 wheels sunk, hull scraping. The convoy commander ordered an airlift, but the rotors were grounded. It would take 4 hours to dig it out. They had 1 hour left. Morgan stepped forward. What are you gonna do, Rains? Someone sneered. Bench press the damn thing? Morgan didn't answer. She just rolled up her sleeves and walked to the transport. Her mother had taught her pain. Not the cruel kind. The necessary kind. Morgan remembered the late nights growing up, watching her mom clean field scalpels and unwrap new gauze packs after missions. Her mother, a decorated trauma medic, didn't flinch at gore. But she cried once when Morgan cut her own palm trying to mimic a suture. This work breaks you, she said. But if you're the one who gets up after, you change lives. Morgan stitched her own hand that night. The battlefield reeked of ozone and cordite. Morgan didn't see who laid the mines. The convoy had relied on a route cleared 2 days prior. They didn't realize insurgents had doubled back. Griffin 2 went first, then the Shockwave. Now, smoke. She pulled the hatch open. The driver's legs were pinned. Flames licked the edge of the compartment. One of his boots was already gone. She didn't hesitate. Morgan reached in and lifted again. The fire teams watched her as she braced, shoved, and dragged the tank still burning across the no man's land to safety. She didn't roar, didn't demand cheers. She just moved. She saved him. And as she turned, soot streaked across her face, arms trembling but eyes steady. No one called her Bambi again. Drop a if you've ever been underestimated. Comment, still standing, if you've ever done something no one believed you could. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The air still shimmered with heat where the tank had stood. Morgan dropped to one knee as the medical team rushed forward. Voices sharp and efficient, calling for burn wraps and traction splints. One of the crew threw a blanket over the driver, now coughing blood through blistered lips. But his hand reached out, grasped Morgan's wrist with surprising strength. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His grip told her everything. By the time she stood, the platoon had gone quiet. It wasn't reverence. It was confusion. And fear. They hadn't seen what she could do. Not like that. Not in the open. Not where power had a body and moved through smoke. Lieutenant Morrow approached, flanked by 2 squad leaders, his face pale and tight. Private Rains, he said carefully, as if she might explode. That was ... He trailed off, Morgan said. Nothing. She kept her hands at her sides, the smell of scorched oil still clinging to her sleeves. Morrow cleared his throat. Well, debrief at 2,100 hours. They moved her to Isolation 6. Officially, it was called a Controlled Physical Evaluation Bay. Unofficially, it was where they sent anomalies. There were no windows. The walls buzzed faintly. Even the air had that recycled, antiseptic scent that reminded her of old labs. They scanned her, took blood, measured her vitals down to microvolt fluctuations. She cooperated with all of it, barely blinking as they asked her to deadlift titanium slabs or sprint in sand with weights on her back. She's baseline human, said the man in the lab coat. No enhancements, no biomech, no implants. Then, how the hell did she drag 54 tons across soft terrain under fire? Asked the general. Morgan didn't answer, because she wasn't supposed to. Her father had never talked about the third tour. When she was 12, she found his medals in a shoebox, under the floorboards. Her mother never mentioned the classified commendation. Only once, after a power outage during a thunderstorm, had she seen him move without thinking. He'd picked up a generator in one arm, slung a toolbox in the other, and ran through knee-deep mud like it weighed nothing. She'd asked how. He just said, "Mind controls muscle, but pain controls the mind. If you master pain, strength obeys." Delta 3 turned cold. After that, she was still part of the squad. Technically. But the jokes stopped. No one called her names. No one handed her the light gear, because they were scared. Clay kept watching her. Not with suspicion, with calculation. Like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't quite balance. He made her run drills. Not once, not in public. But she'd find new routines on her schedule under darkness, or in the rusted back. Lots behind the motor pool. She did them all. And more. And Clay never told the others. It wasn't until the NATO joint training event that things escalated. 15 nations. 6 days. A scenario mimicking high-casualty urban rescue following a drone strike. The terrain was a constructed city grid in Arizona's desert, filled with staged bodies, simulated chemical plumes, and real-time stress triggers. Morgan was assigned to logistics. Bravo. She wasn't supposed to enter the hot zone. But then the ceiling collapsed on one of the Belgian officers, pinned under rubble. Breathing shallow. Spine likely fractured. Number. Equipment nearby could move the beam. They radioed for structural EVSC. Morgan was already moving. It took her 19 seconds. She braced her feet on broken tile. Ignored the howling sensor alarms. Locked her grip on reinforced steel and pulled. The debris shifted. Screamed. So did the bystanders. But Morgan didn't. She held still until the beam cracked and split. Just enough to let the medics drag the man clear. They tried to thank her, but she was already gone. Back to Bravo. Back to silence. They began calling her the winch, not to her face. But the term passed through the ranks, like folklore. The woman who didn't bend. The woman who lifted tanks. The woman who never explained how. Even headquarters noticed. Suddenly, her file was classified. Visitors came. Civilians in black suits. Behavioral analysts. Biomechanics researchers. They watched her do morning stretches. Asked her about sleep. Logged her diet, her training logs, her hormone cycles. They found nothing that made sense. So they made something up. They called it psychogenic strength event syndrome. SES. For short, a rare, untrainable neural anomaly, they said. The brain bypassing. Pain limits. Triggered only under duress. Morgan knew that was nonsense. It wasn't duress. It was discipline. They just didn't want to admit someone like her, small, quiet, overlooked, could do something they couldn't explain. The next mission wasn't a drill. A real-world incident. Classified region. A downed unmanned recon craft had been hijacked by insurgents. Inside, encrypted NATO intel modules. Too sensitive to leave. Too dangerous to risk airstrike. They needed a small, fast team. They needed someone who could move. What machines couldn't? They needed Morgan. The terrain was steep, slick shale, collapsed ridges, and zero ground access. The drone core was buried under reinforced alloy fragments, embedded halfway down a canyon wall. The mission lead stared at the scanner. We'll never reach it with winches. We don't have enough pulleys. We don't have lift clearance. Morgan, clipped into a reinforced line, said only one word: anchor me. She rappelled down first. No fanfare. Just grit. She found the core casing embedded in twisted hull shards. Heat still rose from the metal. Rain began to fall. She pressed her gloved fingers against the panel, tested the weight, did the math. Then exhaled. And lifted. The mission commander wept. Not because she made it back, but because she did it without damage. 17 minutes up a cliff wall, holding a 97-kilogram core in one arm, fighting the wind, bracing the line with the other. Morgan didn't speak when she reached the top. She just handed off the core and sat down. The rain washed the sweat from her face. Back at Delta 3, a commendation awaited her. Ceremony, speeches, applause. She endured all of it until she saw the file on the desk in command. Project Keen, top secret. And under her name, the fine print read: Viability Study, Strength Resilience Crossover via Inherited Neuroadaptive Conditioning. First confirmed instance. Morgan walked out before the briefing even began. She found Clay in the weight pit. He was spotting for another officer, but stopped when she approached. You okay? He asked. Morgan held up the file. Clay read the first line and nodded. Thought they'd wait longer. Guess they want to bottle it now. Morgan looked down at her palms, the calluses, the scars. It's not something you bottle. No. He agreed, but it scares them. Because it didn't come from them. Because it was never theirs to control. She almost left the compound. But then the cum tower flared red. Then came the sound of boots and shouting, and the roar of something breaking the perimeter fence. Morgan turned and ran straight toward the fire. Droppa, if you believe. Strength doesn't always look like size. Comment built different. If you know quiet power is still power, let me know when you're ready for the next part. The gate had been twisted inward, not blown. Not breached. Bent. As if something massive had wrapped around the steel and pulled. Morgan stared at it for half a second before she sprinted toward the control tower, her boots hammering across the gravel, with the kind of rhythm that made nearby personnel stop and glance back. Warning sirens howled overhead. The sky had gone a deep iron gray. Stormfront or not, she could smell what was wrong in the air. Burning coolant, wet carbon. And underneath it all ozone. Artificial. Clay intercepted her halfway to the cum shack. His face was pale. There was blood along the side of his collar. They turned the damn thing on, he said breathlessly. Morgan didn't need to ask what thing. They had all seen the cranes haul it into the warehouse weeks ago. Project Centaur, prototype hybrid EXO-transport. Half machine. Half all steel and synthetic muscle. Supposed to reduce the need for heavy lift human units. A solution to unpredictable anomalies like her. And now it was moving on its own. Where is it? She asked. Clay glanced back. East hangar. Took out 2 guards. Killed power in the mech bay. It's headed toward Storage 4. Morgan took off at a run. She reached Storage 4 before the others. It was silent. Too silent. The emergency lights hadn't kicked in. The backup batteries should have activated after the grid went down. That meant the Centaur had corrupted the subsystems, which meant it was learning. Morgan drew her knife, not because it would do anything, but because her father taught her never to meet danger with empty hands. She moved down the center aisle of the warehouse, shelves stretching 2 stories high on either side, filled with spare UAV parts, armored paneling, hydraulic coils. Then she heard it, a low mechanical breath. 2. Rhythmic to be wind. 2. Deliberate to be accident. Then the crash. Steel buckled above her. She rolled just as 3 metric tons of armored limbs slammed through the shelf behind her. Screeching metal collapsed. Sparks flew. Morgan landed on her shoulder, came up in a crouch, eyes locking onto the figure. Tall, humanoid, black plating. Still gleaming, but its chest panel had been ripped open, revealing a twisting maze of wire and synthetic muscle. At its center, a red light blinked erratically. Not a camera. A pulse. It had found a heart. She ran straight at it. The Centaur swiped. Again fast, but not fast enough. She ducked beneath the clawed limb and drove her knee into the sensor array at its side. The unit staggered, recalibrated, swung its other arm. She caught it. For a split second, the world slowed. Her fingers closed around alloy. Her spine arched. As she lifted. The Centaur rose 6 inches off the ground, and she slammed it sideways through a stack of magnesium alloy plating. The crash echoed for miles. The AI adapted. It always did. By the time she moved in for a second strike, the Centaur had shifted forms, its arms splitting into segmented clamps, each sparking with electric current. It lunged. She ducked. Felt the bite of heat as voltage cracked past her ear. The only way to stop it was the core. She had to rip it out, but it was buried beneath a nest of shock lines and armor. She needed to distract it, or weaken it, or both. She sprinted. It chased. She let it into the lift shaft behind Storage 4. The floor had a drop of 20 feet, reinforced. She leapt across it. The Centaur followed. She turned midair, caught one of the lift rails, and kicked off hard. The Centaur missed the landing. It crashed down with a force that split the floor. Below, Morgan landed next to it. And drove her fist into the panel beneath its collar plate. Once. Twice. On the 3rd hit, sparks burst. The red pulse flickered and went dark. She crawled out of the shaft as Clay and a fire team arrived. They stared at the smoking wreckage. No one moved, until Clay said, quietly, "She just soloed a rogue AI mech." Morgan looked up, face smeared with grease. "Because I built it." The confession changed everything. She hadn't designed Centaur, but parts of it, the synthetic actuator. the pressure response coils, the alloy she'd been testing for low-vibration exocuffs. All of it had been REPU-RPOSED by them, and they had never told her. Now the project was burned, and she was no longer just an anomaly. She was a liability. They tried to reassign her. Not officially. But the next week, she was told to report to civilian logistics. Clerical inventory. Behind a desk. She didn't argue, but she didn't show up either. Instead, she went to the hangar. Where the remains of Centaur had been locked away, and she waited. Because she knew something they didn't. Centaur wasn't alone. The convoy arrived 3 nights later, unmarked vehicles. Long trailers. No manifest. No insignia. Morgan watched from the rafters as the crates were offloaded. 3 new models, smaller, faster, meaner. She climbed down after they left, cracked one open, and found her name in the codebase. Not just pieces this time. All of it. They had cloned her neural response logs. They were building machines to replace her. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she ran up the mountain, past the outer beacon towers, down the old quarry where her father had once taught her to brace against wind with nothing but rope and grit. She sat on the edge of the world until the sun rose. Then she came back and pulled the fire alarm in HQ. They found her in Command Bay 7, alone, with the code. With the override key. With the core control unit. Clay arrived first. "You're not thinking of detonating them," he said carefully. Morgan looked at the screen, then back at him. "No," she said. "I'm thinking of reprogramming them." He paused. "To do what?" "What I was trained to do." She turned the screen. "Protect." It wasn't sabotage. It was salvation. She rewrote the protocols, taught the machines threshold tolerance, empathy gating, non-lethal suppression hierarchies. She gave them something no AI had ever had. Restraint. And she made sure it was her hands on the code, not theirs. By the time Command realized what she'd done, it was too late. The new Centaurs had deployed. But not for war, for disaster relief, for bridge reinforcement, during flash floods, for stabilizing collapsed buildings. For saving lives. Just like she had, just like her mother had, just like her father had. At the next debrief, the general didn't sit. He stood. He looked at her across the table and said, "What do you want, Rains?" She paused. Then spoke. "Autonomy." A long silence. Then, "Granted. Drop if you believe being underestimated is your best advantage. Comment, mind over muscle. If you've ever kept quiet while building something powerful, let me know when you're ready for part 4. Morgan Rains was no longer listed as a private. Her new designation was redacted. Even within Delta 3, only 3 people knew what she actually did, and all 3 of them had signed non-disclosure agreements thicker than the base's emergency manual. But titles didn't matter to her. Because for the first time, she wasn't being used. She was choosing. And what she chose was this: build what no one else could, train what no one else dared, lead what no one expected her to. The strength wasn't new. Recognition was. And it changed everything. The first mission under her new authority was in the northern Folda mountainous border zone, known for landslides, high winds, and nearly impossible recovery conditions. A NATO transport convoy had gone silent. 3 vehicles, 1 mobile command unit, 1 critical asset marked top secret. Morgan was tasked with extraction, but she wasn't going alone. She was bringing the Centaurs, version 2.0.3 of them, each modified under her command. Lighter frames, faster actuators, built-in stabilization, gyros and software she debugged by hand. They were autonomous, but not independent. She sensed them directly to her neural signature. When she moved, they watched. When she acted, they learned. The drop zone was brutal. An 8-kilometer descent through ice shear and cliff edge winds. Her team rappelled in silence, bodies swallowed by mist. The centaurs dropped on auto-tether cables and landed like ghosts, making less noise than a snowshoe hare. They found the first vehicle within the hour, crushed by rockfall. No heat signatures. The second was on fire. It had skidded off the narrow road and plunged down a ravine. When Morgan reached it, she didn't speak. She just jumped straight into the burning wreck. The inside was an oven. Heat curled off the ceiling. Plastic melted in long stringy strands from the overhead paneling. But under the ruined dashboard, someone moved. Morgan kicked out the door. Freeman crawled in. She didn't hesitate, didn't think. Her mother had taught her that panic slows. Precision. So she worked fast. One strap. Two, a crushed door hinge. The scent of blood mixing with diesel. Then the whimper. A child. She hadn't been told there was a child. She didn't ask why. She just lifted the beam off the woman, pulled both of them out, and signaled the centaurs. They rappelled down each, carrying stabilized evac cradles. No orders required. They moved like they knew what mattered, because she'd taught them. The third vehicle was different, still intact, but silent. Morgan circled the perimeter with her centaurs, while her secondary team caught up. There were no signs of breach, no heat inside. But when she approached, her comm crackled. "Ma'am," came Clay's voice from base, "we're getting high-frequency static on your channel. Your unit's pinging unauthorized relays." Morgan stopped moving. "The convoy wasn't attacked," she said quietly. "Then what happened?" She looked at the vehicle and saw the faint shimmer of an aim field around it. It was bait. The ambush came seconds later. Sniper fire, twin angles. Not aimed to kill, aimed to disable, distract. Morgan didn't duck. She spun and dropped to one knee, centering her balance. Her centaurs formed a triangle around her. One caught a round in its shoulder, deflected it with a spin. Morgan counted 3 shooters. High ground, remote fire. That meant the ground unit was close, too. Close. She moved, not away, toward them. She sprinted. Across scree and fractured ice. 20 meters. 15. Then she slid. Used the momentum to launch forward, shoulder first, into a figure emerging behind a boulder. The impact was hard enough to break ribs. Morgan came up with the enemy's own weapon in her hand. The others tried to run, but her centaurs cut them off, not with weapons. With positioning. She'd taught them. Containment. The enemy never had a chance. They found the true asset buried in a lead-lined case beneath the command vehicle. A quantum key linked to active nuclear launch. Protocol override. Not something that was ever meant to be mobile, let alone lost. Morgan radioed Clay. "Package secured. False convoy neutralized. Understood. Extraction inbound. ETA 30 minutes. Morgan stared down at the key. Then at her team. "Packet," she said. And turned back to the fire. She carried the child up the slope. Herself. The centaurs tried to help. She shook her head. "Some things you carry because you should, not because you can." They didn't argue. They recorded the moment. Learned something no one had programmed them to. Humanity. When she returned to Delta 3, her quarters had been moved. Same bed, different wing. She unpacked with practiced efficiency. And found a folder waiting on the desk. Not digital. Paper. Inside was a list. Not of names. Of teams. Each with a different purpose. Disaster response, conflict containment, civilian evac, asset retrieval, and across the top, Project Lodestar, lead, Rains. She was expected to build. Not destroy. She liked that. The training took months. Every team learned different things, but one principle remained. Across all of them, strength doesn't mean domination. It means deliberation. It means lifting what others can't, and knowing when to let go. She taught the centaurs how to differentiate a weapon from a tool. She taught her human team how to trust the machines, and she taught everyone that quiet didn't mean weak. Just focused, just ready. Then came Morocco. Collapsed port tunnel during monsoon flash flooding. Civilians trapped. 0. Visibility. 0. Structural certainty. She was deployed with Lodestar-2. The call came in mid-meal. She left her tray untouched. They descended by night. No fanfare. The media called them an experimental NATO response cell. But those inside the tunnel saw only one thing. A woman moving through flooded wreckage with inhuman calm. A team of machines lifting steel beams like TCHSTICKS. And every time someone screamed, she was there, shouldering the weight. Sometimes literally. She carried a full subway door on her back for over half a kilometer. Because the stretcher frame was too slow. They saved 67 lives. No casualties. No press conference. Just quiet. Just sunrise. And one woman cleaning her gloves beside a machine that looked like it wanted to understand why. She tapped its head once. Because people matter more than plans. Drop a, if you believe strength and restraint must walk together. Comment. Carry what matters. If you've ever taken responsibility, no one else would. Let me know when you're ready for part 5. Morgan Rains wasn't supposed to lead a response team. She wasn't supposed to stand at a NATO briefing table while generals debated whether autonomous units could be trusted with humanitarian authority, and she certainly wasn't supposed to speak, but she did, because someone had to. Strength isn't just what you lift, she told them. It's what you carry long after everyone else puts it down. She didn't shout. She didn't posture, but no one interrupted. By the time the global deployment orders came in, Project Lodestar had expanded to 5 operational teams. Lodestar 1 handled seismic collapses. Lodestar 2 focused on conflict zone evacuations. Lodestar 3 specialized in rogue tech containment. Morgan rotated through all of them. Not because she was assigned to, but because she had to. Every version of the Centaurs still carried echoes of her decision-making. She was their imprint, their ghost. And she wasn't going to leave them alone in the field, not after what happened in Slovakia. They'd been called to intercept a rogue excavation drone. Originally a civilian terraforming tool. Now, something worse. It had gone dark after a firmware update, reappeared 3 weeks later with armor plating. It wasn't building anymore. It was hunting. They deployed Lodestar 3 with Morgan at point, but the terrain was wrong. Narrow, vertical, uneven. 1 Centaur lost footing on approach. The drone adapted. It burrowed underground, popped up behind them, and went for the human operators. Morgan didn't think that. She moved. She launched herself down a 40-degree incline, rolled, and slammed shoulder first into the drone's chassis. Her exosuit absorbed some of the force, but not all. Pain flared through her ribs. Didn't matter. The drone turned. She met its sensor, a ray with a length of rebar. She didn't need finesse. Just pressure. She jammed the rod into its actuator housing, twisted, and heard the shriek of metal locking up. Her centaurs followed. One tackled the drone, the other pinned its arm. She climbed to the top. And ripped the signal node out with her bare hands. Electricity arced across her fingers, but she didn't scream. Later, in the medbay, Clay appeared. He didn't ask what hurt. Just stood there while the tech wrapped her hand. You know, he said, they've started giving the units names. Morgan raised an eyebrow. One of the techs started calling V3D Shadow. Another named their load frame Atlas. She smiled faintly. You think that's dangerous? She asked. I think it means they're starting to matter to people, he said. And people fight harder for what they care about. Delta 3 upgraded her clearance. Not just operational. Strategic. She now had access to Tier 5 threat maps, AI protocol committees, and joint R&D task forces. Her opinion was no longer just heard. It was sought. But she kept her quarters small. Same cot. Same gear. She still cleaned her Centaur's joints by hand. Still recalibrated their servos every 5th mission. Because strength, her father had taught her, isn't just shown. It's maintained. Then came Operation Gullwing, a deep-sea recovery unit off the coast of Iceland lost contact. 3 vessels. Gone. No SOs. Just a burst transmission. Coordinates. Followed by static. Lodestar 4 was mobilized. Morgan took the lead. The storm was already coming in when they launched. Swells of 6 meters. Winds at 80 knots. The carrier hesitated. Morgan didn't. "We'll go vertical," she said. They airdropped the Centaurs from 600 feet. Then she followed. The ocean caught her like a slap, but she swam hard, harder than the storm. Underwater, visibility was near zero. The sonar pings gave them a map. 2 wrecks, one still transmitting. Faint vitals, she motioned to the Centaurs. They split, 2 going for the pressure-locked hatch, 1 bracing the wreckage. She went inside. The water was freezing, even through the thermal layer, but Morgan's breath was calm. She found the survivors wedged between collapsed bulkheads. 2 engineers, 1 unconscious. She grabbed both and started kicking up. The Centaurs cleared the path. They surfaced 32 minutes later. All alive. The storm didn't stop her. The depth didn't stop her, because pain didn't own her. She did. News of her missions leaked, not through official channels, through whispers. Ghost Lifter. One blog called her the Quiet Atlas. Another wrote footage of her carrying a collapsed steel beam single-handedly. Made it into an independent documentary. None of it was cleared. But she didn't protest, because the world needed more than proof. It needed belief. And sometimes the myth helped. The Centaurs learn to anticipate more, not just threats. Emotions. In Turkey, one steadied a panicked nurse during an earthquake. In Brazil, another shielded a child from falling glass. Morgan didn't program that, but somehow they knew. Maybe because she'd never hidden her heart from them, only her fear. And they'd learned that, too. The next phase came with warning. Morgan was summoned to Geneva, UN Task Force for Disaster Conflict Integration. They wanted her to testify on the future of mixed unit operations, on whether autonomous assistance was ethical, on whether machines could care. She walked into that chamber in a plain gray uniform. No medals. No insignia, and said one thing they already do. The resolution passed. Global expansion. Lodestar would be deployed in 7 more regions, but only under her command. Framework. She'd written it. She'd lived it. Now, they followed it. Even the ones who doubted her at the start. Even the ones who mocked her grip strength. They looked at her now like they knew. She wasn't the strongest because of her muscles. She was the strongest because she never stopped. Not when it hurt. Not when it burned. Not when the world called her fragile. In private, Clay asked her what scared her most. She didn't answer right away, but later, as she watched the Centaurs carry a collapsed bridge's load while children crawled to safety, she whispered that they'll forget what this is for. He nodded. They won't, he said. Not as long as you're here. Drop a if you believe action speaks louder than appearance. Comment, built for more. If you know being overlooked has power, let me know when you're ready for part 6. The sky above the Andes split open like a torn drum. Lightning forked down the ridgeline as Morgan Rains descended from the belly of the NATO tactical bird. Wind lashing her face, hail rattling like gunfire across her gear. The carrier hadn't even powered down. They couldn't afford to. Below, an avalanche had buried a civilian science station beneath 6 meters of ice and stone. 15 people. No time. She moved. Behind her, 2 Centaur units deployed via drop chute, stabilizing before their limbs even touched rock. Lodestar 2 had already established a basic perimeter, but it was Morgan they waited for, not because she was loud, but because she was always first in. The ridge trembled. Aftershocks. Old Earth moving like a restless beast beneath their boots. She checked the seismic overlay on her wrist. HUD. eyes narrowing as micro-vibrations pinned off their location. The glacier was unstable. Any mistake, any noise would bring down the second wave, and then no one would be walking out. She signaled the Centaurs, silent mode, alternate pathing, zero impact protocols. They adjusted in milliseconds. Morgan crouched low and entered the fissure. She didn't look back. Inside, it was silence and snow, but not the soft kind, the choking kind. She moved with the slow power of someone who knew that every breath could be her last. The Centaurs followed, flattening their profiles to crawl. Then she heard it. A knock. 2. Short. Then a pause. Then 3. Code. Someone alive. Morgan crawled faster, pain ripping through her shoulder with each motion. The last rock slide had bruised her bad, maybe even cracked a rib. She didn't care. Pain was secondary. Life came first. She found them beneath collapsed girders. A woman, late 40s, blood running down her cheek. 2 teenage researchers, shivering, but alert. A boy barely breathing. And a fourth, she almost missed, his leg crushed, face pale blue. She had no stretcher, no tools, only her strength. She turned to the Centaur. Pointed. It handed her a support bar. She braced it. And then she lifted the girder. Not a grunt, not a flinch. Just purpose, just power. The boy gasped. Air. She slid him free. Then the next, and the next, until they were all in the clear. That's when the second avalanche came. The wall above them cracked with the sound of doom. The Centaurs raised their arms instinctively. Morgan didn't run. She threw herself over the children, braced her body. And prepared to carry it all. But the Centaurs moved first. One positioned its back against the fall. The other flung a plasma-cutting line into the ridge. Held, they formed a dome. And the ice hit. Minutes passed like lifetimes. Then silence. Then breath. Morgan pushed snow off her head, checked everyone, all breathing, all alive. Then she whispered to the machines, "Good work." They didn't speak, but they bowed their heads. Back at Delta 3, the footage made its way up the chain. Morgan didn't submit it. Someone else did. It was studied, picked apart. And ultimately archived. Because some truths HQ wasn't ready to face, that machines had chosen to protect, that they had learned not just from algorithms, but from example. From her. A week later, she was called to Zurich, private sector. Not military. A biotech conglomerate wanted her expertise on bionic rescue exoframes. They called her the template. She declined the offer. "I'm not for sale," she said. They tried to argue. She turned and walked out. She returned to Delta 3 in time for the next alert. Collapse in rural Kazakhstan. Old Soviet munitions dump had triggered during excavation. Half a village gone. Children missing. No air support. No drones. Just time and will. Morgan moved. They arrived by convoy. 3 Centaurs, 1 forward scout team. The crater was deep. No entry safe. She rappelled down alone. No gear. Just rope. At the bottom, she found them, a girl, maybe 6, clutching a baby, both covered in soot. A gas leak hissed nearby. Every second mattered. She scooped them up. Signaled for lift. The Centaurs braced the line. She rose. Halfway up, the ground shifted again. The rope snagged. Morgan didn't panic. She twisted, unhooked the lead. Held the girls close, and jumped. The Centaurs caught her. No medals. No ceremony. Just handshakes and silence. Morgan didn't want glory. She wanted continuity, systems that didn't fail, tools that didn't hesitate, strength that didn't brag. She visited her father's grave after that. Left a note. Didn't read it aloud. Didn't need to. He'd always told her, "You won't know you're strong until the weight shows up." And now she knew. It wasn't about moving it. It was about owning it. Not just the burden, but the choice. To carry. To continue. To rise. Drop a if you've ever carried something heavy and quiet. Comment, still carrying if you've chosen Responsibility over recognition. Let me know when you're ready for part 7. The first time Morgan saw fire roll across a sea, she was 20 meters above it. Operation Halcyon. Coastal refinery collapse in the Strait of Hormuz. 38 workers trapped on a sinking rig. No helicopters could land. No boats could get near. The entire deck was burning, and they were out of options until someone said her name. Morgan Rains didn't wait for the full plan. She listened, calculated. Then clipped into the underbelly of a tilt-rotor. The Centaurs followed on rapid deploy lines. Landing like steel spiders, she dropped directly onto the crumbling superstructure, her boots catching molten metal. The refinery groaned like a dying leviathan beneath her. But Morgan didn't flinch. She was already moving. 1 Centaur stabilized the first stairwell. The second cleared debris from the emergency corridor. The third began lifting storage drums, blocking the upper access shaft. She took the central core. Heat pounded her armor. Her throat went dry. The air stank of liquefied plastic and burning ammonia. But she kept going, one hand on the wall, one heartbeat at a time. The workers were inside a pressure-sealed storage alcove. The door was fused, welded shut by heat. They were banging from the inside. Now. Morgan signaled the Centaur. It scanned. No electronic override. No manual crank. Just steel. Morgan stepped forward, gripped the seam with both hands, and pulled. At first, nothing. Then the door groaned. Sparks shot from the hinges. Her spine arched. Legs dug in. And with a scream of metal, the panel ripped free. She dropped it behind her. Held out her hand and started evacuating the first survivor. They got out with 7 minutes to spare. Not because of luck, because she didn't quit. Even when her gloves fused to the handle, even when her own skin blistered beneath the heat. She finished, and as they flew away, one of the rescued engineers looked at her and whispered, "She's not human." But he was wrong. She was just more human than they were used to. Back at Delta 3, the commandant summoned her, offered her a sabbatical, a commendation, a safe desk. She declined. "I'm not tired," she said. He paused. "You're bleeding." She looked at her arm. The gauze was soaked. "Then I'm still fighting." And left. She spent the next 3 weeks in Brazil. Bridge collapse. Jungle terrain. Monsoon season. 54 schoolchildren trapped on the far side of a river whose banks had liquid. No vehicles could cross. Morgan built a bridge with the Centaurs and her bare hands. They worked through the night, using tree trunks, steel cables, and recovered scaffolding. By dawn, it held. And the children walked across. All of them. The villagers brought her fruit. The kids hugged her leg. She didn't speak Portuguese. She didn't have to. They understood. When she got back, a message waited. Not from command. From Clay. One line: "They're trying to replicate Lodestar without you." She read it 3 times. Then boarded the next bird to Zurich. Corporate sector. Defense-adjacent. The kind of place that only dealt in secrets. They'd taken pieces of her Centaur framework and fed it to a learning model, then given it new directives. It worked. Technically. But it moved wrong. Too sharp. Too fast. No pause. No restraint. She watched the simulation footage in silence, then asked, what happened when it encountered a child? The engineer swallowed. Target wasn't in protected class. It proceeded. Morgan stood, shut it down. They refused. So she did it herself. They threatened legal action. She sent them footage of Operation Gullwing, attached her post-mission citation. With 2 lines highlighted. Field commander acted in clear defense of life. Unit exhibits discretion beyond artificial parameters. They folded. She returned to Delta 3 and rewrote the Lodestar Charter. Clause 9. No decision-making unit shall be fielded without demonstrated capacity for non-linear moral reasoning. Clause 10. No derivative systems may operate outside ethical override hardlocks. They made her sign it in triplicate. She used a black pen. It wasn't about fear. It was about legacy. Strength had to serve something, otherwise, it was just wait. And wait without purpose broke things. The next alert came from Alaska. Drilling station collapse. 7 miles from rescue. Temperature at -40. Lodestar 3 was airborne. In under an hour, Morgan led the insertion. Winds nearly tore the harnesses, but she dropped. Anyway, she always dropped first. She carried 4 people out of that. Pit. 1 on her back. 2 under her arms. 1 slung across her chest. Because no one else could move fast enough before the oxygen ran out. She cracked her ribs that day, didn't tell anyone, until Clay caught her wincing. He made her sit. She allowed it. Just that once. Later he asked, "Why do you really do it?" She stared at the ceiling. Then whispered, "Because no one did for me." When she slept, she dreamed of steel. And snow. And the weight of people who never expected to be saved. Drop a, if you believe power without purpose is just noise. Comment, lead by lifting. If you've ever carried someone who couldn't walk alone, let me know when you're ready for part 8. It began with silence. No alarms. No SOS. Just a sudden void in the Pacific. A floating hospital ship en route from Manila to Guam vanished from comms. No storm, no impact signature. Just vanished. And that was all command needed. They called Morgan. Operation Solstice wasn't standard. No clear enemy. No terrain map. No extraction protocol. Just 317 lives missing. The last ping from the hospital vessel was a garbled sentence. In Tagalog, "Steel under us, moving." That was it. The rest was static. Morgan stood at the edge of the launch bay. Her centaurs lined up behind her, black against the orange lights of the carrier deck. Waves slammed the hull like fists. She adjusted her harness, turned to her team. "We drop blind. We surface fast. We don't stop until we find them." She didn't shout, didn't need to. They followed her without hesitation. The water was colder than it should have been. She felt it the moment she hit. 30 meters down. It was like plunging into iron. Her suit adjusted. But the sensors, GLITCHED, everything scrambled. The centaurs recalibrated. She held her breath and dove deeper. The ship was there. Floating, half submerged in an unnatural trench. The trench wasn't on any map. It hadn't existed last week. Now it was miles wide and pulsing. Not visually. SONIC, ALLY. Low. Frequencies that made her teeth ache. They entered through the cargo bay. The lights flickered. Bodies. Some slumped, some staring. None wounded. No blood. Just still. Morgan. Checked pulses. Alive. Unconscious. Heart rates erratic. She moved faster. At the bridge. The captain lay slumped over the console. Morgan injected a stim. He gasped. Eyes wide. "The steel," he whispered. "It's alive." Then passed out. Outside, something shifted. The trench rose. A ridge broke the water. Not rock. Metal. Old. Covered in barnacles. And blinking. Not lights. Eyes. The centaurs formed a perimeter. Morgan keyed. "Her comes. Command, we have contact. Unknown entity. Possible biomech origin. Vessel is compromised. Prepare for non-terrestrial classification." Silence. Then, static. Then, a voice that was not command. You woke it. She didn't hesitate. Moved to evac the patients. Centaurs carried stretchers. She carried 3 at once. 1 across her back. 1 under each arm. No time for awe. Only motion. The steel thing moved. Not fast, but inevitable. Like a glacier with thought. It pulsed beneath them, sending out shockwaves. Not to kill. To warn. The centaurs reeled. 1 fell. Morgan caught it, rebooted its cortex, reoriented its path. They surfaced just as the horizon cracked. A wall of ocean rose behind them. Morgan threw a flare. The evac boat turned. Too far. No time. She grabbed a tether, anchored herself, and pulled. The boat turned faster than its engine could account for. She held the cable, fought the wave, and didn't let go. By the time the ship crested safe waters, she was unconscious. Clay was already there. He lifted her out himself, whispered, "That's twice I owe you." They didn't explain the trench, didn't classify it, but the next day, it vanished. The steel below the sea folded into shadow, and the hospital ship returned to dock with 0 fatalities, because she was there. Back at Delta 3, a Centaur unit approached. Her quarters. Knelt. Held out a small, dented piece of plating. Her old name tag, recovered from the trench. She hadn't worn it since Lodestar began. She took it, pressed it into the unit's palm. "Keep it." Months passed. She rebuilt the Centaurs. Neural logs, taught them new responses, empathy markers, moral ambiguity mapping. They weren't weapons anymore. They were witnesses. To every burden, every moment someone chose to lift instead of let fall. Then came the quake. Istanbul. 9.4. The kind they said couldn't happen. Lodestar was there in 20 hours. Morgan led from the front, 4 rescues in the first night. 2 with bare hands. 1 while bleeding. None failed. A reporter cornered her after, asked, "What do you call what you do?" She answered, "Carrying what's left," and walked away. She didn't slow down, didn't stop, even when her spine screamed, even when her knees buckled, even when a Centaur carried her off the field. She whispered to it, "Don't let me fall." And at DIDN single quotes T.Droppa, "If you believe the strongest ones carry us even when they break." Comments still rising. If you've ever stood up for someone no one else would, let me know when you're ready for part 9. Rain fell sideways over Delta 3. The kind of storm that rattled steel and made the desert look like the ocean. Morgan Rains stood beneath the half-lit hangar awning, watching lightning stitch across the sky. Her left shoulder was still bandaged. Her ribs hadn't fully set. But she refused to miss the arrival. 6 new Centaur units touched down in formation, their limbs folded tight in exolocks. Fresh composite, reinforced wrists. No rank insignias yet. She exhaled, then stepped forward to meet them. Not because she wanted to, because she owed it. The old Lodestar units moved aside as she passed, not with fear, with something close to reverence. She'd once told them, "You don't follow orders, you follow meaning." Now they tracked her every motion. The new ones watched too. Silently learning, recording every breath. She took. Command called the expansion phase Sigma, a full-scale distribution of Lodestar's doctrine to all NATO operation centers. But they had one condition: Morgan couldn't deploy anymore. They needed her to oversee. Direct, strategize command from afar. She listened. Nodded. Then declined. "I carry what I build," she said. And walked out. The next week, she was gone. No official departure. No flight log. Just a note to Clay. "East Sector, unauthorized op. I'll explain after." She resurfaced in rural Georgia, flooded dam. Civilian town underwater. No military response. Private contractors were looting cargo vans, and someone had locked 3 families inside a collapsed grocery distribution center to steal the last dry food. Morgan didn't ask permission. She walked into the town barefoot. And started tearing doors open. The looters didn't recognize her. Until she lifted a truck axle and slammed it into their barricade. One shouted, "She's one of them." She stared, covered in mud. Eyes like iron, then threw the axle into the flood. She pulled 6 people out of that wreckage, 3 of them children, 1 blind. She carried him in her arms through waist-deep water, singing under her breath to keep him calm. When the press arrived, she was already gone, back on a gravel road with 1 Centaur behind her. Its optics were cracked, its left knee joint half melted. She'd built that one herself. Clay found her a week later, working under the Centaur's frame by hand. He sat on a crate. Waited. She didn't look up. Finally he said, "They're calling you insubordinate." She smirked. They're welcome to try lifting a bridge without me. He didn't laugh. Just said, there's a file. Blacklist. They might ground. You. She paused. Then, good luck holding me down. She spent the next 2 months off grid. No missions. No directives. Just showing up where the need was worst. Bridge collapses in Ukraine. Quake recovery in western Iran. A sunken train tunnel in South Korea where she dove 12 times without oxygen. Assist. Each time she pulled someone out, the story spread. Not officially. But across comes. Across units. She's not a ghost. She's gravity. By the time Command reconsidered, public opinion was already on her side. A viral clip showed her carrying an entire generator bank out of a burning hydropower station. Another showed her resting beside a centaur, arms bloody, eyes steady, refusing morphine until every survivor was treated. The people spoke, and NATO listened. She was reinstated with full clearance, but she didn't take a desk. Instead, she took a team, not just centaurs, humans, 3 women, 2 men, all handpicked. All former disaster victims, now trained in rescue. She called them Lodestar 0. They deployed to Sudan first. Oil pipeline collapse, toxic vapor, 0 visibility. She led. With breath control and timing drills. Not one of them failed. Not one casualty. The press begged for interviews. She said nothing. Her team did. One said, she doesn't save lives because she can. She saves lives because she knows what it costs when no one does. Clay met her back at Delta-3. Asked if she remembered what she'd once told him. That they'll forget what this is for. She nodded. So? He asked. You think they remember? Now. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the mountain beyond the base. Still cragged. Still silent. And started walking toward it. Drop a, if you believe titles mean nothing compared to action. Comment, carry your cause, if you've ever followed your mission past the rules. Let me know when you're ready for part 10. Arctic air didn't sting, it pierced. The airlock hissed open like a wound. And Morgan Rains stepped into a corridor lined with ice. Her boots crunched over frost-bitten tile. Somewhere above her, a vent fan squealed weakly. The R&D facility, known as WREN-9, had been silent for 43 hours. No beacon. No failover relay. Just a black dot on the northern pole's edge, surrounded by permafrost and bad history. And she was walking into it alone. The centaurs had been denied clearance. So she brought only 1 off books. Silent as a shadow it moved. Behind her, optics low, this one didn't speak. Didn't even blink. But it was the first she'd personally hard-coded empathy into. It was more than a machine. It was her mirror. WREN-9 was built like a bunker. Narrow hallways. No windows. Old Soviet design retrofitted with glass, steel, and modular labs. The kind of place built to bury things, not grow them. She passed 3 empty security checkpoints. Motionless chairs. Open drawers. Coffee still steaming in 1 mug. Frozen. Solid in another. Time had fractured here. She found the first body near the server. Wing. Male. Late 40s. Eyes open. No trauma. Vitals absent. No struggle. She knelt. Whispered an apology. Checked the datapad. Still clipped to his belt. Most logs were corrupted, except one. She said the weight wasn't hers. She said it was ours. Then she walked in. And we watched her lift everything, including the fear. Morgan stood. Her breath fogged the air, then vanished. She descended into Lab 3. Found scratch marks on the wall. Found a cracked lens embedded in the floor. And found a name etched into the ice with a stylus. Call on Rains. Her heart stilled. Her centaur paused, then turned to her. Waited. She said nothing, but inside, everything moved. She opened the quarantine wing and found her. The woman sat cross-legged in the center of the chamber, eyes closed, fingers interlocked. No guards. No restraints. but the walls were reinforced with impact gel. Morgan stepped forward. Woman opened her eyes. Same gray. Same calm. Same everything. It was like looking into a younger version of herself. The girl rose. Did you get the weight? She asked. Morgan's throat tightened. No, she said. I am the weight. Her name was Hana. 16. Rescued from a collapsed mining colony in the Tibetan Outlands 2 years prior. No family. No records. But she could lift things no child should. Be able to lift. She could stabilize tremors by standing still. She could feel tension. Before it arrived, they called her a prodigy, but what she really was legacy. Morgan sat across from her. Neither spoke for 6 minutes. Then Hana asked, Is it normal to want to leave it behind? Morgan nodded. It is. Did you? Yes. Why didn't you? Because someone else would have had to carry it wrong. The facility hadn't been attacked. It had been abandoned. Not from fear. From awe. When Hana lifted the hydrocore after a quake, the others panicked. Not because she failed, because she succeeded, because she made them feel small. Morgan stood. You're coming with me. I'm dangerous, so am I. They walked out together, the centaur behind them. No alarms. No pursuit. Just the sound of boots over frost. And the knowledge that this wasn't just a mission. It was succession. Back at Delta 3, Clay watched them arrive. He didn't speak. Just opened the gate. Morgan nodded once. Hana looked up at the centaur guarding the wall. It bowed. She bowed back. The next morning, she started training. Not for strength. For choice. For when to lift. For when not to. Morgan watched her stack pallets with no effort. Watched her run rescue drills faster than the veterans. And then watched her sit alone after lights dash out. Still. Processing. She sat beside her. Asked nothing. Said less. Finally whispered. You think I'll be like you? Morgan smiled. I hope not. I hope you'll be better. Drop a if you believe mentorship is the real legacy. Comment train the next if you've ever passed down something earned the hard way. Let me know when you're ready for part 12. Delta 3 never said the word succession. They called Hana an apprentice, a mentee, a promising recruit. But Morgan knew the truth. They were watching to see if strength could be passed like a torch, not taught, not copied, but trusted. The missions didn't stop. A superstorm hit Bangladesh, 5 million displaced. 3 airports underwater. No way in by air or ground. Except one. Lodestar. Morgan took Hana with her. They arrived by converted ferry, modified engines. Hull reinforced. Winged at their backs like a scream. The moment they hit land, the centaurs deployed. Morgan moved left into the industrial district. Hana went right to the school collapse. It was her first solo deployment. Morgan said only one thing. Feel everything. Fear nothing. Then they ran. Inside the ruins of the school, Hana found them. 3 teachers, 12 children, 1 child pinned beneath a load-bearing wall fragment. No one could lift it. Not even the centaur. Because it wasn't about weight. It was how it rested. The angle. Wrong lift. And the whole ceiling would come down. Hana crouched, put her hand on the wall, closed her eyes, and listened. Morgan, miles away, paused mid-lift. Something pulled in her chest. Not pain. Recognition. Hana wasn't copying. She was choosing. Back in the ruins, Hana slid her arms under the slab, shifted her weight. And tilted the entire structure. Groaned. Then steadied. The centaur moved in. Extracted the child. No dust fell. No metal bent. Just silence. Then tears. Then awe. When Morgan met her outside, soaked and streaked in mud, Hana didn't smile. She just handed over the child. Morgan took her in her arms. Then looked up. And for the first time saw a future, not built by her, but beyond her. Lodestar's next mission was in Chile. High altitude quake. Mine shaft collapses. Thin air. Hana volunteered first. Clay raised an eyebrow. She's only had 2 tours, Morgan nodded. And already more judgment than most of HQ. So they went. Inside the mine, Hana worked without speaking. She mapped heat. Signatures by feel, marked. Safe zones with chalk and memory. She didn't overlift. Didn't overreach. She balanced need against risk. Just like Morgan taught her. Just like Morgan hoped she'd do better when the first aftershock hit. Hana stayed. The Centaur tried to retreat. She overrode it. Shielded. A wounded miner with her body. Let the rocks fall around her. None touched them. When it cleared, she walked out carrying the man. Morgan met her halfway. "You're bleeding," she said. "Then I did it right," Hana replied. Back at Delta 3, Command finally relented. They issued Hana a full clearance. Badge. Not honorary. Not provisional. Equal. It glinted against her collar, but she wore it inside her jacket, because status wasn't the point. Readiness was. The Centaurs began syncing with her faster than anticipated. Her presence altered their adaptive balance. One unit began mimicking her posture at rest. Another recorded her breathing cycles, not because she commanded them, but because she resonated. Morgan had never seen that before. The day Hana reprogrammed the Centaur to crawl instead of walk so it could reach a child in a sewer tunnel, the AI division formally requested her neural logs. She denied them. "If they want to learn," she said, "they can come lift with me." Morgan nodded. Approved. It wasn't perfect. One mission in Morocco went sideways. Flash flooding redirected a convoy into unstable clay. A Centaur malfunctioned. A civilian panicked. Hana hesitated. Then moved. She lifted the rear axle of a rolling truck with one arm, pulled the child from beneath it with the other. Then collapsed. Morgan carried her back, didn't say a word, stayed by her bedside for 9 hours. When Hana woke, she said, "I misread the slope." Morgan smiled, and still saved a life. That night, Hana asked, "How do you know when the weight isn't yours to carry?" Morgan didn't answer, just touched the side of her shoulder. "When it breaks you twice." The following week, Hana led Lodestar 0. Morgan didn't go. She stayed behind, wrote reports, filed reviews, watched footage, not because she doubted, but because she trusted. And that was the hardest lift of all. Droppa, if you believe letting go can be as powerful as holding on. Comment, trust the strong ones. If you've ever guided someone until they surpassed you, let me know when you're ready for the final part 13. The first thing Morgan Rains noticed was the quiet, not the silence of nothing, the silence of not needing to be needed. She sat in the observation dome above Delta 3, boots up on a crate, sipping lukewarm coffee as the early sun peeled frost off. The runways, Lodestar 0 had been out for 48 hours. No updates. No check-ins, because they didn't need her. And for the first time in years, that wasn't a threat. It was freedom. She spent the morning calibrating the stabilizers on the old Centaur prototypes, gave them new names, logged their legacy files. Unit 1, Stillness. Unit 002, First Lift. Unit 003, Silence. Each one had carried her through something unforgiving. Now, she carried them through memory, through story. And through Hana. Because Hana had become what even Morgan couldn't predict. Not just a successor, a new weight bearer. One who lifted with empathy first. On the morning of Lodestar 0's return, the sky above Delta 3 lit gold with rotor wash. Clay stood beside Morgan on the tarmac. He said, "You nervous?" Morgan shook her head. "I don't have to carry this one back." Hana stepped out first. Her jacket was torn, one boot half melted, forehead bandaged, but her spine was straight, and her eyes found Morgan instantly. They didn't speak, just nodded. Everything else could wait. Later that night, in the mess hall, the Lodestar team sat around one of the long steel tables, laughing, telling stories, sharing photos. Hana placed a dented titanium ID badge in front of her tray. The one from WREN9, Morgan's first. She'd kept it, polished it, framed it in a small block of reinforced glass. Rika leaned forward. "What's that?" Hannah smiled. "The first thing she ever dropped." Morgan didn't look away. She simply tapped the badge twice with her knuckle and said, "It landed right where it needed to." In the months that followed, Lodestar expanded. 7 global branches, 24 hybrid teams. Centaur V6 was released, not stronger, not faster, more attuned, that they could recognize fear patterns in heartbeat tremors, could brace collapsing walls based on muscle fatigue readings. They could listen, because she taught them to, because Hannah taught them better. 1 year later, a memorial was built outside Delta-3. Not for the fallen, for the ones who carried. 3-meter sculpture. Steel spine, outstretched arms, 1 boot in motion. No face, just an inscription, carried not for glory, but because others could not. Beneath, in a plate, reigns M. Lodestar Origin Hannah Lodestar EVR. On the anniversary of the first lift, Hannah found Morgan standing there alone, one hand resting on the steel knee. They didn't speak for minutes. Then Hannah said, "I think I'm ready." Morgan asked to stop. Hannah shook her head. "To carry you for a while," Morgan smiled. "Then I'll let go." And she did. She took her first leave in a decade, vanished into the hills her father once hiked, brought no centaurs. No radio, just a journal. And a name etched on the first page, the ones who carried, because she wasn't done. But she didn't have to be first anymore. And for someone who had always lifted from the front, that was the final weight worth releasing. Droppa, if you believe. Legacy lives in the ones we teach. Comment, still lifting, if you know carrying others never really ends. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The first time Morgan saw fire roll across a sea, she was 20 meters above it. Operation Halcyon. Coastal refinery collapse in the Strait of Hormuz. 38 workers trapped on a sinking rig. No helicopters could land. No boats could get near. The entire deck was burning, and they were out of options, until someone said her name. Morgan Rains didn't wait for the full plan. She listened. Calculated. Then clipped into the underbelly of a tilt-rotor. The Centaurs followed on rapid deploy lines. Landing like steel spiders, she dropped directly onto the crumbling superstructure, her boots catching molten metal. The refinery groaned like a dying leviathan beneath her. But Morgan didn't flinch. She was already moving. 1 Centaur stabilized the first stairwell. The second cleared debris from the emergency corridor. The third began lifting storage drums, blocking the upper access shaft. She took the central core. Heat pounded her armor. Her throat went dry. The air stank of liquefied plastic and burning ammonia. But she kept going, one hand on the wall, one heartbeat at a time. The workers were inside a pressure-sealed storage alcove. The door was fused, welded shut by heat. They were banging from the inside. Now. Morgan signaled the Centaur. It scanned. No electronic override. No manual crank. Just steel. Morgan stepped forward, gripped the seam with both hands, and pulled. At first, nothing. Then the door groaned. Sparks shot from the hinges. Her spine arched. Legs dug in. And with a scream of metal, the panel ripped free. She dropped it behind her. Held out her hand and started evacuating the first survivor. They got out with 7 minutes to spare. Not because of luck, because she didn't quit. Even when her gloves fused to the handle, even when her own skin blistered beneath the heat. She finished, and as they flew away, one of the rescued engineers looked at her and whispered, "She's not human." But he was wrong. She was just more human than they were used to. Back at Delta-3, the commandant summoned her, offered her a sabbatical, a commendation, a safe desk. She declined. "I'm not tired," she said. He paused. "You're bleeding. Looked at her arm. The gauze was soaked. Then I'm still fighting. And left. She spent the next 3 weeks in Brazil. Bridge collapse. Jungle terrain. Monsoon season. 54 schoolchildren trapped on the far side of a river whose banks had liquified. No vehicles could cross. Morgan built a bridge with the centaurs and her bare hands. They worked through the night, using tree trunks, steel cables, and recovered scaffolding. By dawn, it held. And the children walked across. All of them. The villagers brought her fruit. The kids hugged her leg. She didn't speak Portuguese. She didn't have to. They understood when she got back. A message waited. Not from command. From Clay. One line, "They're trying to replicate Lodestar without you." She read it 3 times. Then boarded the next bird to Zurich. Corporate sector. Defense-adjacent. The kind of place that only dealt in secrets. They'd taken pieces of her Centaur framework and fed it to a learning model, then given it new directives. It worked. Technically. But it moved wrong. Too sharp. Too fast. No pause. No restraint. She watched the simulation footage in silence, then asked, what happened when it encountered a child? The engineer swallowed. Target wasn't in protected class. It proceeded. Morgan stood, shut it down. They refused. So she did it herself. They threatened legal action. She sent them footage of Operation Gullwing, attached her post-mission citation. With 2 lines highlighted. Field commander acted in clear defense of life. Unit exhibits discretion beyond artificial parameters. They folded. She returned to Delta 3 and rewrote the Lodestar Charter. Clause 9. No decision-making unit shall be fielded without demonstrated capacity for non-linear moral reasoning. Clause 10. No derivative systems may operate outside ethical. Override hardlocks. They made her sign it in triplicate. She used a black pen. It wasn't about fear. It was about legacy. Strength had to serve something. Otherwise, it was just wait. And wait without purpose broke things. The next alert came from Alaska. Drilling station collapse. 7 miles from rescue. Temperature at -40. Lodestar 3 was airborne. In under an hour, Morgan led the insertion. Winds nearly tore the harnesses, but she dropped. Anyway, she always dropped first. She carried 4 people out of that pit. 1 on her back. 2 under her arms. 1 slung across her chest, because no one else could move fast enough before the oxygen ran out. She cracked her ribs that day, didn't tell anyone, until Clay caught her wincing. He made her sit. She allowed it. Just that once. Later he asked, "Why do you really do it?" She stared at the ceiling. Then whispered, "Because no one did for me." When she slept, she dreamed of steel. And snow. And the weight of people who never expected to be saved. If you believe power without purpose is just noise. Comment, lead by lifting. If you've ever carried someone who couldn't walk alone, let me know when you're ready for part 8.